I first met Kinko's founder, Paul Orfalea, in 1997 while writing a story about him for Forbes. At the time, I had the same reaction most people do. Who is this guy? I had never met anyone like him, nor have I since. I wanted to know a lot more, but no book existed to satisfy my curiosity. Once I began to work with him one-on-one, I started to feel that the words human being don't fully capture him. I prefer to think of Paul as a weather pattern, or, as one of his partners describes him, a hurricane. Paul is a force of nature with the power to effect a lot of change in a lot of people over a lot of territory, all at once. Now, if a hurricane could talk, what would he sound like? Good question. I've done my best to translate Paul not only to the written page, but also to the linear world in which he is definitely not a resident. The truth is, he's always better in person. I hope you can hear him speak somewhere. I've never met a more circular, out-of-the-box thinker. It's often exhausting trying to keep up with him, as many of his partners can attest. But as they and I have discovered, it's worth the effort because he has an important story to tell. Important not only for business people and entrepreneurs who will benefit from his unorthodox and inspirational teaching, but for kids, teachers, and parents struggling with learning conditions like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and dyslexia. Paul's learning opportunities, as he calls them, are a big part of the Kinko's story and of his own story. Yale dyslexia expert Sally Shaywitz defines dyslexia as a reading difficulty that is unexpected for a person's age, intelligence, level of education, or profession. Dyslexics like Paul may not be able to decode the written word the way you or I can, but they compensate for this difficulty with an extraordinary ability to see things you and I cannot. Most people underestimate or simply don't understand the exceptional talents, learning opportunities, can confer on the people who have them. That is what this book is about. It's the story of how Kinko's came to be, and a record of the peculiar genius behind the company. Anne Marsh. Introduction. How to succeed in business without really reading. Not many kids manage to flunk the second grade, but I did. I couldn't learn the alphabet. This code called reading, so easy for other students, I found difficult to break. They read as though angels whispered into their ears. They wrote in graceful curves and perfectly straight lines. I made chicken scratches. To me, a sentence was a road map with ink stains in all the critical places. Consequently, I became a goof-off. Of the 8 schools my parents enrolled me in, 4 expelled me. In 3rd grade, my frustrated teachers sent me to a school for mentally retarded kids, housed in a teacher's residence in Hollywood. Most of my classmates suffered from Down syndrome or other conditions of severe mental and physical impairment. Fortunately, I was given an IQ test, scored 130, and rejoined the public school system. Still, things didn't get much better. I may not have been able to read, but I could find my way to the principal's office blindfolded. My typical report card came back with 2 C's, 3 D's, and an F. A brilliant tutor named Selma Hare finally managed to teach me to read, after a fashion, using phonics. I graduated from high school with a focus in woodshop, 8th from the bottom of my class of 1,200. Frankly, I still have no idea how those 7 kids managed to do worse than I did. My name is Paul Orfalea. In 1970, I started a copy shop in Santa Barbara, California, in an 8-foot by 12-foot storefront next to a hamburger stand. I called it Kinko's after the nickname college friends gave me because of my kinky hair. Today, there are more than 1,200 Kinko's locations across the globe. The revenues from those stores top $2 billion annually. Federal Express, our former vendor and the new owner of Kinko's, plans to dramatically increase the number of retail outlets. I am most proud of the fact that before I retired, Fortune named Kinko's one of the best places to work in the country 3 times in a row. More than 100 of my earliest co-workers and partners are millionaires today because of what we built together at Kinko's. As someone with a condition I now know is called dyslexia, I could never have predicted I would make my name in what is essentially the reading business. Kinko's is not only a fixture on downtown street corners, but a fixture in the minds of millions of customers who use it to solve any number of their problems. Today, I spend most Mondays in an unusual spot for someone with my skill set. I'm back in Santa Barbara, not far from that first Kinko's, teaching economics to college seniors at the University of California at Santa Barbara. Naturally, I use a different teaching strategy than other teachers. I don't use a roster to take roll. I take Polaroids of each student on the first day and scrawl their first names on each one. I keep this stack of photos in my pocket and shuffle through it when I need to. When I ask them for writing assignments, which is rarely, I never want more than one single page of clear and concise prose. I could care less about their grades. I give almost all of them A's. Instead, I teach them skills that have little to do with academics or test scores. Among other things, I teach them new ways to think about money and investing, how to present their ideas verbally, how to talk with people from authority figures to each other. To this end, I run an exercise to teach them one of the hardest things in the world to learn, harder than calculus, harder than economic theory, harder than fixing a photocopier. "Peter," I say, picking a student at random, "isn't there a lovely young woman in this class who you'd like to ask out for Wednesday night?" Nervous laughter spreads across the room. People start looking at each other or down at their shoes. They're thinking, "This is a world economics class?" Yes, it is. "You want me to just ask somebody out?" Peter asks, incredulous. We've gotten to know each other over the past couple of classes. Now he looks at me as though I've gone insane. I'm accustomed to getting this sort of reaction in life. I give him back an equally incredulous look. "You mean you wouldn't want to go out with one of these lovely ladies?" "Peter, this is your chance." "Okay," Peter says, looking across at Wendy. With a toss of the head, he says, "Hey, what are you doing Wednesday night?" "Very cool." "No, no, no," I say. I wave my hands in the air like a conductor. "Ask her nicely. Nicely. Be polite." Have you ever noticed that kids these days really don't know how to talk to each other? Peter begins again. He sits up a little straighter. He looks her in the eye. "Wendy," he begins, making eye contact, "would you like to go out with me Wednesday night?" This is a different kid entirely, both polite and courageous. Now Wendy is embarrassed. It turns out she has a boyfriend. I ask her if she knows what she's passing up. She murmurs something and looks down. But Peter isn't off the hook. I get him to ask somebody else. This time, Carol, shyly, says yes. I pull out a crumpled wad of bills from my pocket and give Peter some money, because most college kids are always pretty poor. "Where are you going to go?" I ask him. He hasn't thought this far ahead. "Maybe Palazzo?" he ventures. "Oh, that's a great place," I tell him. I get this pair to settle on the hour they will meet on Wednesday. By this time, there's a lot of laughter. Believe me, no one is bored. 7 p.m., I confirm. "Great. Maybe I'll come," I say. "I'll see you there." I've never turned up, but I like them to think I might. Next week, I find out how the date went. Maybe I get another pair or two in class to set up on dates. Sometimes the students keep dating each other. Sometimes they don't. But the point is, they get a chance to learn how to talk to each other. They get to see someone navigate rejection and survive it. They get to see someone asking for something he wants or needs from another person. Sometimes that's all we need to learn to do in life. The truth is that most of the boys are dying to ask out one of the girls, and most of the girls have an eye on one of the boys. Even if they're straight-A students, speed readers, and star athletes, they're scared half to death of putting themselves on the line. They need a push. This is one of the greatest lessons I learned from my own